All right, at this point in the NBA season, we have a pretty good idea of which teams are real playoff contenders. I'm going to discuss my opinion on who I think each of those teams are. Starting with the East Coast squads, I'll do a separate video on the West Coast teams. There's about 8 teams in the East and 8 teams in the West worth talking about. The rest of the teams are pretty much already eliminated from the playoffs, and those teams will be experimenting with lineups and rotations the rest of the season. Not worth talking about, in my opinion. But starting in the East with the Celtics, easily the best team in the NBA as far as roster construction goes and as far as the odds makers think as well. They're basically even money to win the Eastern Conference, with the next closest odds being plus 300 with the Bucks. That doesn't mean this Boston team doesn't have issues, and it definitely doesn't mean that they can't be beat. Celtics always seem to play down to their level of competition, and they allow other teams to dictate the pace and style of game, and Boston just tries to beat them with their talent. And for a team with as much talent as they have, they're terrible late in games. They rely way too heavily on just Tatum in the crunch. Their head coach, Joe Mazzulla, might be the worst end-game manager in the league. If they're not winning by 20 points going into the fourth, you can pretty much count on it being a one-possession game under 2 minutes. And I'm not even sure if the Celtics are such heavy favorites to win the East because of how good they are or how bad everyone else is in the East. They have a really easy path to the finals, in my opinion, but there's zero value betting on them at this current price. If I could bet them to not win it all, that'd definitely be a bet I'd consider. Next team up is the Cavs. But before I get to them, if you're interested in getting access to bets I make and also bets from my network of professional betting groups that I have arrangements with to access their plays, you can now get them sent directly to you in real time by clicking my fan basis link in my bio and signing up for a sports specific package or an all sports package. You can use code LEFTY to get 50% off any package. This code is only good till March 1st. We're absolutely crushing college hoops right now. After last night's 5-1, we're up over 60 units on the season. And historically, March is when we actually do most of our damage. So we're looking at possibly a season best record. And I'm telling you, if people actually knew who were originating some of these bets, they'd pay a whole lot more money than I'm charging. But let's get back to the Cavs here. I have the Cleveland rated higher than most people do as the second best team in the league, but odds makers think they're the fourth best at plus 900 odds to win the East. So I do show value on them. Spider Mitchell having a great year. He's a big reason why the Cavs are 36-17. Now that they're healthy, the Cavs have depth and defense, two things I always look for in playoff teams. They're second in adjusted defensive rating, only behind the T-Wolves, who are actually share kind of a similar concern I have. They both lack spacing on offense, which could be an issue in the playoffs. Mobley and Allen just take up so much floor space, just like Rudy Gobert and Cat do on Minnesota, but the difference is Mobley and Allen are absolute dogs on defense. Cavs won't be an easy out for anyone. Even though I'm not a big fan of their head coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, I think he's a bottom 5 coach in the league. But moving right along here, I got the Knicks as the third best team in the East. They're currently at plus 700 to win the East. Loved the deadline moves they made, getting a shooter in Bogdanovich and adding an elite defender in OG to go with an already great defense. And this dude, Isaiah Hartenstein, having a breakout year. The Knicks as a team have improved so much with talent and depth, more than any other team in the league. But I do have a long list of concerns with the Knicks, starting with Julius Randle's shoulder and his lack of consistency in meaningful games. Other injury concerns with OG's elbow and Mitch Rob's knee. And I hate how Thibodeau is so against playing at fast-paced game when they need it most. And maybe the biggest concern, in my opinion, is their home and away splits. Such a different team on the road, and think they'll really need home court advantage in the playoffs, which means they can't take nights off during the last 25 regular season games. Securing a top 4 seed should be a priority for them. The Knicks are an easy play-on team at their current future price if you think they can stay healthy and get a top 3 or 4 seed going into the playoffs. But the Knicks will probably really run out of gas, in my opinion. Thibs has them playing like every game like it's a playoff, and don't see them having enough left in the tank come April. Got a couple more teams I want to touch on quickly. The Bucks next. What a bizarre mid-season coaching hire here. How does hiring Doc Rivers, who's notorious for blowing playoff leads and not making the finals, make any sense? Who thought that was the hire to turn this ship around? Since Doc has taken over, he's slowed down the pace for the Bucks, and has tried to get them to play defense. And after a 10-game sample size with Doc as head coach, the Bucks are 3-7. A team with talent like this should never have a 3-7 10-game stretch at any point in the season. I'm really down on the Bucks here. They're terrible against the spread, second worst to only Atlanta. They have 3 aging stars with Lillard, Lopez, and Middleton. Their window is basically now or never. They're trying to be like a defensive first team, but Lillard and Beasley is your backcourt. That's basically asking them to play opposite of who they are. I guess if you believe that the Bucks can turn it around and stay within the top 3 or 4 seed range and then turn it up in the playoffs, your time to buy them is now, but I don't think that's happening. Next up, I got the Heat. Same story every season. They look awful for long stretches at a time, and then Jimmy Butler's hurt or playing through something. Hero isn't playing defense, and they only have Bam to rely on for any type of consistency. But there's definitely worse options than betting Miami future bets. Jacquez Jr., true game changer when Jimmy isn't in. I really like Rozier when his responsibility is just being a versatile scorer. Duncan Robinson has seemed to found his stroke. And most of all, they still have a wizard for a head coach. Do I think they have a championship run in them? No. But I didn't think they did last year either. And I like this year's team more than I did last year's. Next team up, we'll go to the other Florida team, Orlando. The Magic are the most profitable team against the spread in the league. 36-19 against the spread. If you bet on them every game this season, you'd be up almost 1,400. Really surprised their head coach, Jamal Mosley, isn't being talked about more in Coach of the Year conversations. They're 5 games over 500. They win with defense and only really have one star player, if you consider Banchero a star. They're young. They play hard. On paper, they look like a great playoff team. Hard-nosed defense. They share the ball incredibly well. But their lack of perimeter shooting holds me back from buying on this year's team. But long-term, they have some real upside if they can keep Franz and Suggs and Banchero together. Next up, the Pacers, a team I really like but have no desire to risk money on them doing anything this year. I'm a big fan of head coach Rick Carlisle. Halliburton's becoming one of my favorite players, and I've had good luck betting on the Pacers so far this year, but it's not a team I trust. They're number 1 in points per game scoring, but with 123.7, but they allow 122.3. They have to outscore you and outscore you by a lot in order to win games. Miles Turner on defense has taken a nosedive. That's probably why Carlisle has decided to go more up-tempo with this group. That, and of course, because they have unreal offensive talent. Plus, Naismith and Mathurin are still very young, and it's easier just to tell those guys to run and not worry about anything else. Not a fan of the Siakam move. He seems so out of place in this system, and even though it looks great on paper to have a second star, all it's really doing is taking minutes away from developing the young talent they have. Also, I'll never understand trading away Buddy Hield in this system of pace and shooters. He's like the perfect fit for this squad. Pacers, in my opinion, still 2 years away from contending. Last team worth discussing is the Sixers, but it all comes down to Joel. I was really high on them to win the East prior to Embiid's recent injury. They have the coach. They now have the depth and scoring punch. I don't like them defensively, but defense could just be negated by Joel's dominance. The Sixers actually have the 3rd best against the spread record in the league at 31-23. But again, everything hinges on Embiid returning. Assuming he does return, he's probably going to be playing through pain in both legs. Without him, it's obviously a glaring hole on defense, and you still have Tobias Harris efficiency issues. Could the Sixers make a playoff series interesting without Embiid? I don't think so. If you watch to the end, I appreciate you. Be on the lookout for my Western Conference team breakdowns. Until next time, good luck with your bets.